Welcome to the Golf Improvement Podcast, episode 223.
Welcome to the podcast for golf lovers who are looking to shoot lower scores. Dedicated to professional club fitting, putting and short game improvement, and effective practice techniques to improve your golf game. This is the Golf Improvement Podcast with your host, Tony Wright.
Hello, this is Tony Wright from Game Improvement Golf in Oak Ridge, Tennessee with the Golf Improvement Podcast, dedicated to sharing useful information on professional club fitting, putting and short game improvement, and effective practice techniques. Changing golfers' lives, one golfer at a time. I know that I know way less about the performance of zero-torque putters and who they'll work best for than I need to. I also know that there's a lot of great buzz in the golfing world about these putters. David Orr, creator of the Flatstick Academy, has been doing a lot of testing with many zero-torque putter options for at least a year or more. So I'm excited in this interview to have him share some valuable insights about the performance characteristics of zero-torque putters. Enjoy this episode and maybe have a pen and notebook in hand to record some of the things you hear.
Tony Wright and Game Improvement Golf, changing golfers' lives, one golfer at a time.
Hello, this is Tony Wright with episode 223 of the Golf Improvement Podcast. And welcome back for the ninth time, David Orr, Golf Magazine Top 100 teacher, creator of the Flatstick Academy in Southern Pines, North Carolina. And it's been 2 years since we did one of these, so this is going to be good. What a topic today, torque-balanced putters. I know you've done, you've been thinking, in the last couple Flatstick conferences, each one you've mentioned a little bit about this and done a bunch of thinking about them. And I'm excited for you to share some of that today, David. Thanks.
Hey, Tony, it's great to be here for the ninth time.
Yeah.
So that must be pretty good. And also enjoy being a sponsor of your show as well. So thank you very much.
I hope that's paying off a little bit for you, but it's paying off for me. So that's good.
Perfect. Yeah. So we're going to talk about zero torque putters.
Pretty cool. But this is usually I sort of start these a little different than I am today, but I want to tell you why I'm excited about this. Okay. So particularly, and then you can share some of that yourself. Because I help coach a junior college, I'm pretty sure a couple of our kids are going to come in next year, new recruits having zero torque putters. And I want to find the kind of information to share with them about the why yes and the why no, why they should understand. And I'm not sure anybody is really talking too much about that. And obviously, it's different and different is good and options are good. But so that's what I want to talk about and hear from you about today.
Yeah, super. I'll just give you some of my thoughts. I've been very fortunate to be testing, several of these different putters. I mean, companies have sent me zero torque putters over the past few years. Obviously, I had a relationship with Justin Rose, so Axis One would be one of those companies that has a zero torque putter. And what's interesting is not all zero torque putters are built the same. And for instance, the Axis One putter has the center of the face, the center of mass of the club, and the shaft axis all meeting at one point, and they have a patent on that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that was the one that Rosie had been using for years. which makes sense to me because we've talked about the face, the head, and the shaft, the three components of a golf club, right?
Yeah, right.
And when you have all those meeting at one point, then it would make sense that I could track that thing back and forth quite easy. So that would be one of my first companies to deal with. And also Adele Golf, David Adele. He said it best, not all torque balance putters are created equal. They're not made the same. David's Adele torqueless putters were built where he took weight out of the toe. So there's more weight in the heel than the toe, and that's what made it stand toe up, so to speak. Other companies are putting the shaft right through the center of mass of the club, if that makes sense, or even just slightly above it so that it hangs, so the toe is hanging straight up and down. So I think that's important. That would be a very important point as a putter fitter or a coach, is to know the exact design of that zero torque putter and know that they're not all designed the same. So, for instance, if I had a zero torque putter where the shaft axis is inserted just slightly above the center mass, or even the center of the face just a little bit, I want to watch out for heel strikes, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes. So learning to hit these things more in the center of the face, I think, is an important skill or fundamental. Does that make sense? So yeah. So basically, not all zero torque putters are built the same. That would be the first major point. Your thoughts on that, Tony? Because you're a club designer.
Well, and I even had another friend. I've got another friend that I've known for a long time, Bob Eubler in Indianapolis.
Yes.
And he made them by, exactly how he bent the hosels and stuff. Okay.
Correct.
A lot of those. So, but I honestly didn't realize that, when you first talked about, Axis One and all these different ones, and there's even different versions of the L.A.B putters that are a little different in how they do it. And some of it is moving the mass around on the bottom.
Yes.
Like the ones in the video from Adam Scott I talked to you about.
Oh, yes.
I mean,
exactly.
they don't change the mass in the bottom because it's oriented, I believe, so that it makes it zero torque.
Gotcha.
Right? So, yeah, there's a lot of different options, and not many people are thinking about that and talking about it, but just talking about
they're just seeing the label zero torque and just grab one, right? Without really any understanding of how it's made and how it could have, impact how you move a little bit. I mean, at least influence it a little bit, right? So,
yeah.
People always ask me, well, who's it for? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think if I were to do the broomstick, without question, 100%, I would definitely do zero torque. Just because of the way I'm holding the club, with my left hand and thumb at the top and my right hand down in some sort of claw or saw or whatever position. And that's what are those, 48 to 52 inches long?
Yeah.
And that thing swinging back almost like a fixed radius, moving side to side and playing. I definitely don't want that golf club twisting. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that would definitely be. I see a lot of players doing the L.A.B Mez 1 for that broomstick. But I also, L.A.B has sent me numerous putters. I'm talking just shy of a dozen. And like this Oz one that they just sent me, that would be my go-to. Like I actually like this one. So
they're going to like you saying that. That's good.
Well,
yeah,
I'm being honest because, right. We'll talk more about our experiences with zero torque, but, and I'll talk a little bit more about how I modified mine to make it feel better. But I think on the broomstick, I would definitely look at probably the Mez 1 or the L.A.B Oz 1i. That's Oz.1i. So I think if I were doing the lead arm lock, where the club's resting against your forearm or your lead wrist lock, that's when I would probably get into like more of the forward leaning shaft versions, because you can get them where they go relatively straight in, maybe a degree of lean or zero, but you can also get them with 2 degrees of lean with the shaft built in. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like a built-in forward press, I guess, right? You just got to make sure you got enough loft. So the biggest error that I see, and Biv Wadden agrees with me, as you know, Biv.
Yes.
That you got to make sure that you loft up. If you built in forward lean in the shaft, you're going to need to add a little more loft. So I think some people are just playing these with just not enough loft. So I would probably do the forward press shaft lean version if I am lead arm lock, lead wrist lock, or even maybe some versions of the left hand low. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think one thing that people got to remember is the hands are not played in the middle of the body. And the ball is definitely not in the middle of the body. Does that make sense? So It's more of a built-in shaft leaning toward the lead side of the body. Hands need to be forward, ball needs to be just a little bit forward, and make sure you have enough loft. So those are my thoughts on that. So like that directed force 2, I think it is, or 3, I can't remember which version it is, but one of them has like a slightly smaller head, I think. I think that would be really good. Really good. So yeah. And then when you get into, like, if I were putting claw, I would do any of those for sure. I kind of like the Axis One Rose Proto. You know what I mean? Like where it's the kind of like the Odyssey number 7 head. You know what I'm saying, with the fangs
right
on the back, right? And then you got the center of the face, center of mass, and the axis of the shaft all meeting in one place. So I would probably do that personally. I would do the claw with that one. And then, and then getting back to like maybe the L.A.B Links blade, which is kind of like, to me, a zero torque balance putter version of a Seymour, where there's the face is in front of the shaft. That's the onset. Does that make sense? As opposed to offset. So offset would be the face behind the shaft, and onset would be the center of the face in front of the shaft. And to be honest with you, in my testing, and I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think the onset is having a huge effect on why people may or may not be putting better with these things, Tony. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, the face in front of the shaft, for some people, they might be aiming it better. They might be returning the face to square. But the onset, I think, has a much bigger deal in it than I think people realize. So I think that's kind of cool. And then, obviously, Bettinardi makes the antidote, right? Which kind of looks really good, too. So any thoughts on the offset or onset of what your thoughts
my
there,
biggest
Tony?
excuse me my biggest thoughts as at least I was thinking about this, is I don't think people talk about enough yet about the aim part of this, and about sort of the dynamics. Okay, are the dynamics affected by torque balance putters? Because still need to have a good rhythm, right?
Yeah.
Things like that. And so, I mean, I don't know those answers, but then we're going to come back later when you talk about what you did with your putter, the whole balance of it. I mean, it's just not buying a putter and saying it's torque balanced. There's other pieces to the whole puzzle for somebody that they should consider.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So listen. So, back in 2007, 2008, 2009, I did some testing for David Adele's system, and I had the ability to test different amounts of offset versus, no offset, versus we had one hosel that put the face in front of the shaft, which is onset. And it did have a minor influence on aim. That makes sense. So I think one of the cool things that L.A.B is doing is they give you a ton of different sight pictures to put on the putter. Do you know what I mean? I had a kid that came in the other day. He got the Oz One eye, which is the one that has, instead of the aluminum with grooves, it's the stainless steel insert. That's what the I stands for, is the insert is stainless steel. I'm not sure if it's 303 or not, but it's stainless steel and it's slightly milled, kind of like what your Scotty Cameron would your old Scotty Cameron would feel like, or, off the face. So there's a higher ball speed off that stainless steel face than there is the aluminum groove. The aluminum grooves, the ball comes off real slow. If there's one flaw in that design, it would be the aluminum and grooves it's a slow ball speed. So unless you're playing at Oakmont or Augusta or Pine Valley or Seminole, I would stay away from aluminum and I would stay away from the grooves. So that's just my opinion. Whether I'm right or wrong doesn't matter. But yeah. So back to the original discussion on this. I think the onset might be why people might have a little more success, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And not just an aim, but also like your face relative to the path. Like, I think it's easy to kind of, if you go left with the hands through the ball and you've got the face in front of the shaft, it might be easier to hold the face just a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whereas you can get really hooky with the offset, and that's one of the things that my friend David Fritsch pointed out up there in Maryland. Like we were talking about the old Scotty Cameron Newport, the original Ping, and I'm like, I love the way these things look and I love the way they feel, but man, do I fear hitting it, toward my left ankle. Like, I feel like I'm going to pull it. You know what I mean? And he built me a putter that, instead of having a shaft or a shaft and a half of offset, he built me one with only 3/4 offset, and it's amazing how that fear of left kind of went away. So I think this onset and offset, there's something to it, and it might be, I can't quantify it relative to the zero torque. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But at least it's an option for your aiming and it's an option for your face. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think one of the big assumptions is that, hey, look at these putters stay square. You know what I mean? Like, it's a little bit of marketing, if that makes sense, because the golfer is holding on to the club. Does that make sense? Number one.
Yeah.
Okay. Number two, the golfer also applies forces and creates torques with their motion. Because the thing that people don't realize, and what my area expertise is that joints rotate. And they're trying to build putters like, oh, see, our putters don't rotate. But joints and segments are rotating, Tony. You know that. You've been in my program for years.
Yeah.
So golfers are putting force. And then what's interesting is on Doc Neal's Golf Biodynamics 3D software, which I use, we do have torque graphs. And the biggest torque applied to the club is the in-plane or side-to-side motion. Like, how it would, if you were thinking, okay, if I were swinging the club in-plane or with the loft rotation, that makes sense. That's the big mover of anything that any stroke. The next would be the out of plane movement, like changing the lie. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then twisting, which is what everybody is worried about. The golfer's holding on to the club, right? If your forearms are twisting the club, or your shoulder joint external and internal rotation are causing travel and twisting, the putter's going to rotate. So I just think it's based off of some sound engineering principles, but is it reality? Does that make sense? Like, I think everybody's assuming that we don't rotate anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But anyway, I think these putters are definitely for some people. The people that I've tested, for people that have pretty good mechanics, you will get a little less rotation in the backswing. Okay?
You mean a little less of the largest rotation, which is so absolute. Yeah, what you call absolute rotation, right?
Yeah, yeah. So absolute rotation would be the face rotating relative to the target line.
Yeah,
and that's due to travel, like how long it's traveling and how much curvature, plus any twisting or thrusting. That makes sense. So it's just your face relative to the target line. That makes sense, or the target. That's absolute rotation, and it's affected mainly, like I said, by travel and curvature. Okay, and then your relative rotation would be like the face relative to path, which is definitely curving. Now, some curve more, some curve less. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So those will be two things that you need to consider is the absolute rotation and the relative rotation. So what I've noticed just with some good players that have really good patterns of movement is there tends to be less rotation, less absolute rotation or twisting. And a matter of fact, it might even feel like it's counter-rotating a little bit, like just a little shut in the backswing, squaring back up, and then opening as it goes through. So even though it's built to keep the face square, that's not exactly what I'm saying, but it is reducing the rotation, the absolute, and also the rate of rotation, meaning it's a little slower rotating.
Yeah.
Because there's some counter in there. That makes sense? So
yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot of people that like them. I think there's going to be some people that there's no significant difference because their mechanics are so poor, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then I think there's going to be some people that have really fine-tuned mechanics that may or may not like them because of it's got a very unique feel. And one of the unique feels is with the zero torque putter, you don't really feel the head or face much, but you feel the whole club. And I was explaining this to Sam Hahn, the CEO of L.A.B Golf. I said, people that are feeling the whole club MOI, where it's just the whole club, like you're just swinging a pipe side to side, might really like that. In other words, they're carrying the handle back and forth, right?
Yeah.
Now you get somebody that's very aware of the head or very aware of the face, so like below the balance point, they're not going to like it because they can't feel, torque is one of those things that help us feel where the face is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it feels like there's no head or there's no face at the bottom, which gets us into your comment earlier. They've sent me just shy of a dozen of these suckers. And you're a club fitter, and how important is the balance point on a golf club?
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah. And so what's interesting is they sent me a couple on this last bunch. And I was like, man, I really like this club head. I really want to give it a chance. You know what I'm saying? I want to kind of get my bias out of this. I should be able to find one of these at work. Do you know what I'm saying?
And by the way, in some of your video, in some of your promoting wise a little bit, your new Flatstick videos, I think the putter that you use in that is the L.A.B putter, isn't it?
Well, it's one of them.
It's one of them, right? Which that was kind of nice.
Well, I wanted to test it, and I just grabbed it. Yeah, but so what's funny is I got to tell you about the modifications. Yeah. So whenever I take a putter, I always balance it on my finger to find the balance point, okay? And I always measure the distance from the butt of the club to that balance point. For my putter, it's 26 inches, okay?
Yeah.
And then the distance from the balance point down to the bottom of the leading edge. So for this particular putter at 33.5 inches, it's, I think, 7.5 inches. Does the math sound right there? 26 and 7.5. Is that 33.5?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Perfect. So what I did to do that is, number one, I tore off that big grip. Number one, I wanted to put a lighter grip on it. That makes sense? That was number one. So just by putting a lighter grip on it, which I recommend to those people that want a little more head feel, that lowered the balance point just a bit. What are we talking? 3/4 of an inch to an inch? Is that what you see, kind of?
It's always a little hard to know. It depends on the head weight some too.
Well, we were going to go there next.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the first thing I did was I put a lighter grip on it so it moved the balance point a little bit lower toward the head. And then the second thing is, like you just said, is the head's got a ton of weight. Like, it's funny how I think on their ordering form you can order different head weights. I can't remember how it goes, but like standard, heavy, and heaviest or something like that. Yeah. They don't tell you exactly what the head weight is, but they give you at least a choice. And also with my grip choice, what I did was I also went to make things fair, I also went to the same grip that I have my Ping Answer.
Sure.
Makes sense? So that was two things that I did, was lighter and then smaller grip. move the balance point down. And then I made sure that I did not get aluminum in grooves. I went for the stainless. So what's interesting is, you remember when we were at the Flatstick conference last year, and we had 25 people hit the L.A.B Links, which was aluminum,
right,
with grooves, and it was their blade version. It looked like Seymour, right? And then we had everybody hit my Scotty Cameron heel shafted Napa, which looks like an 8802.
Yes.
And the consensus of the group was, I can't feel the face, right? But what's interesting, by making these modifications that I've just spoke about, lighter grip, smaller grip, moves the balance point down, get a little acoustic feedback from the face, I can actually start to feel the head on this L.A.B putter. So the only thing, so now it's almost a fair fight, because when you put the L.A.B, the modified L.A.B putter that I did against my Ping Answer, it's pretty much, everything's pretty much dead even, except for the overall weight and obviously blade versus mallet, but the zero torque is the only thing that's different. So when I spent, I've hit over 18,000 putts on Vertex with all these different putters and stuff like that. The L.A.B putter for me is really good on the short putts, and with this new insert and making sure you have enough loft, I think the ball speeds are decent. So I think, there's, like I said, there's a couple of L.A.B putters when, if you modify them just a little bit, you might be able to find a little bit of gold there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So your thoughts on my modifications, Tony?
Well, I mean, you made it to be as close as you possibly could, except for that one other, other difference, which is the best way to do an experiment, right?
Yeah, well, the funny thing is it actually feels good, sounds good, looks good. Like, I think that kind of checks those three boxes right off the bat, doesn't it?
Yeah, but
so a lot of, go ahead.
But the big thing to me, it kind of gets back to what I said in the beginning, is people that want to use these or give them an option. Boy, I hope they get more and more options to allow people to test something that is not just the fact that it's zero torque, that it's the right length, the right kind of weight and balance and all those kind of things. So they can really make as best a decision as they can.
Yeah, and I think the industry's heading there. I think we'll be fitting 180 degrees of torque in the future. And that's kind of what they originally sent me, 5 test putters that they built for my testing. Is one was toe up, which I call 0 degrees. That makes sense?
Yeah.
They sent me one at 45 degrees, kind of point toward 2 o'clock. Then they sent me one at 3 o'clock, which is the 90 degrees. People call that face balance. And then 135 would be like the answer, toe hang towards 4:30, 4 o'clock. And then 180 toe down. So they sent me 5 testing putters that I did some testing. And I did a test group, a little case study group, to see if it was even worth going down that rabbit hole. And unfortunately, it was the golfers that I was working with were pretty good golfers, and they had pretty good ingrained movement patterns that were really fine, right? So there wasn't a significant difference with that testing group. Now, I also do think that, I agree with some folks out there, it's one thing to test them at one point in time, but to test them over a period of time, that would be the thing to test, to see if somebody gets used to it or not. But yeah, I mean, it goes back, like I said, there's going to be people that it actually helps. Like this young boy I had the other day.
Yeah. And it's on Facebook. That's the kid, right?
Yeah. You saw it, right?
Yeah.
All I did was, with the kid, his hand path and putter path were going left. And I said, okay, this club's built with the shaft through the center mass of the club. And the center mass and the shaft are behind the center of the face. And I said, you could literally feel like you're moving this club or tracking it in a straight line. But when you do it, make sure you have some vertical tracking. So it's not just back, but it's back and up. And then it's back down and it's forward and up. And just that key of getting him to swing the putter back and up, down and forward, forward and up, feel like it's moving straight, that fixed the hand path, that fixed the putter head path. And the putter head's still arcing. It's just not arcing as strongly. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So he can have the feel like he's stroking it straight back, straight through, whatever, even though he's not, but it sure feels that way to him. And that putter was a good fit. So I think with some modifications, with the right modifications, people can, they can look good, feel good, and sound good. So, so it just took me, like I said, 11 putters, which is normal. And usually when guys make a handmade for me, it takes 3. So like Tad Moore has made me several. The late Byron Morgan had made me several. It takes a few but I know exactly what I'm looking for too. It's not like just here, make me one of these in chocolate, make me one of these in vanilla, and make me one of these in strawberry. It's like, I know exactly what I'm looking for.
Well, your sense of feel is so crazy too. It's very different. So
yeah, well, it's funny. I'm not going to name the technology, but somebody had sent me a technology to test, and I'm hitting putts, and I wake up one day and I'm like, my timing numbers and dynamic numbers don't look right, and I'm like, I called the company up. I said, did you guys change something on this? And they go, we did. How'd you know? I'm like, because I'm hitting 100 to 200 putts a day. No one stroke pretty good, but they had changed a little something, and I picked up on it. But it's funny, Tony. It's hitting 100 to 200 putts a day. Tiger was right. Like, that's where the little tiny feels and sensations come from. Like, you can tell the apparent differences from the apparent similarities. You can really feel it when you hit a high volume of reps if you're using feedback. But these putters are not there. I think people, like you said, they're showing up at a lesson. They're showing up at a lesson for a putter fitting with me and a lesson, right? And they have a L.A.B putter with a wrapper still on it. Haven't even hit it yet. And the only criticism I would say is this online fitting is a little off. Like, I cannot tell you the number of people that have come to me with the wrong length and the wrong lie and the wrong loft. Like, those 3 basic things.
Yeah.
So I think in the future, we'll be a little more accurate, with online fitting, because I think AI will probably eventually be involved. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think right now, online fitting is still a little bit rudimentary.
Any fitting though.
Yeah. And and if there is one guy on the planet that knows how to fit online, I got to give kudos to Bruce Rarick. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, there's a guy that can look at a video or look at a clip and or a report, and he could probably do it, but he's probably the only guy that could probably really do a good job. Does it make sense? And Bruce, right? He's been on your show. Yeah. So, but going on line and just answering some questions and sending some videos in and saying, okay, what's my length, lie, and loft? I don't think the training is there yet, if that makes sense. But I do. I mean, like I said, I think zero torque putters are for some folks. Like I said, other folks, no significant difference. And then, some people are going to not like them or be worse. And let's talk about that. So say somebody that putts a lot with their wrists, that makes sense, like old school, little. Right. I don't think these high MOI, low torque putters are for them. I mean, literally, I cannot tell you the number of players that from the 60s and 70s that I work with, it's like, oh, I need to take my wrists out on it. And I'm like, dude, if you've seen the research that I've done in 3D over the last 13 years, every good player has a little bit of wrist. It's just, when I mean a little bit, we're talking a degree or two. It makes sense? Big fat grip might slow the rotation down a little bit, but it's not going to take care of the grip, or the rotation and the wristiness. It's still going to be there. That makes sense? So let me rephrase that again. So the bigger grip will reduce the rotation rate around the shaft torque.
Yeah, everybody thinks it's the other. Everybody thinks it's the other.
They think it's the end plane, which is the wristiness. So so I just wanted to correct myself there. So anyway, and I never get it perfect anyway. So, but anyway, I think if you putt with your wrists, I would probably be going the opposite direction. More of a lower MOI and a lighter putter head, and a smaller grip. Now, you did ask me about dynamics, correct?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I always test is overall weight, like the weight of the head, the weight of the shaft, the weight of the grip, the overall weight. And one of the things I've learned is that blades, good putters that putt with blades tend to be a lighter overall weight. So let's just say like old school blades from the 90s, 80s, 500 grams total, right?
Yeah.
So, if you took, like Tiger, Brad Faxon, Stan Utley, those are a little bit lighter. So it's funny, every 10 years, or is it 5 years? I can't remember. We did a test on that. Putters have gotten heavier. The blades have. That makes sense?
Yes.
But I think the blades, but that's also because the grips have gotten heavier. That makes sense. So if you add head weight, you need to add grip weight, which adds overall weight. So, so every 10 years, is it 10 years? You remember the slide I had in my PowerPoint?
I think it was 10.
Like that. Yeah. Yeah. So it's gained weight. But I think sometimes people get blades that are too heavy and mallets that are too light. I think, square backs and mallets can be heavier. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Because what you're doing, here's the question you have to ask yourself when it comes to zero torque putter. Are you looking for stability or are you looking for precision? And it's very difficult in putters designed to have both. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So if I went with a heavy head, high MOI head, heavy shaft, low torque shaft, low torque shaft, big, fat, rubber, heavy grip, now you've got a putter that weighs well over 600 grams. And the only player that I can even recall that putted with great precision was Lauren Roberts. He had a heavy putter, right? And I think guys back in the day, they used to put like sand down the shaft. Did you ever do that with a putter?
It's been a long time, but I got a big bag of sand in my basement.
Yeah. So as you know, if something's heavier, in the takeaway, it might be slower, right? If something's lighter, it might be quicker. In the transition, it might be slower, and then a lighter putter might be a little bit quicker. So I think it's affecting the acceleration in the takeaway and the acceleration in the transition, and obviously to impact. And I also think different styles of players, do you putt with your wrists? Probably going to favor more overall lighter weight. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Do you putt with your arms? Do you putt with your shoulders or your torso? So I do think the overall weight affects the dynamics of it. I think people tend to think heavy's good. I think of heavy as slow. I think of heavy as a dump truck. I think of light like a Tesla, like a P90X or whatever, P90D Tesla, right? Like that's quick, you know what I mean? So why is it quick? It's light and it's got a lot of torque, right? So a Tesla's light, got a lot of torque. Whereas a dump truck, would you be rather driving a Tesla or a dump truck if you were going around a mountain curve? What would you be rather driving?
I think I'd want a lot more control, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know that I want to be driving a dump truck around a curve. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Because here's the interesting thing is all that weight and all that, high MOI once it gets going in a certain direction, it wants to stay in that direction. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what if it was going in the wrong direction? This is my one contention on the putter fixing your stroke. Okay. Is the one thing about the design of some of these zero torque putters is if the player is putting force into the club on the downswing, it's like pushing a shopping cart. You push it on the below it, it opens it. You push it above it, it closes it. Like the problem with these zero torque putters is the golfer is applying force to the club.
Yes.
And these forces create torques. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So I know the theory is great when you put in the revealer, and it's like, yeah, but the golfer's not putting any force on the handle. And literally when these things get off track, pardon the pun, It's literally like pushing a shopping cart. Have you ever pushed a shopping cart, Tony?
You sent me that video of the one guy. Remember?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, I don't know exactly which one it was, but go ahead and remind me.
Yeah, that he's trying to close the face, but he's pushing it way out.
Oh, yes, exactly. Yeah, Kevin.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is, when you start applying a pushing force that's not aligned, if that makes sense, in plane, if you push a little under, it opens, and you push a little across the top, it closes, right? So it's literally like, I know these things are balanced to swing square in the revealer, which is a good concept, but the reality is golfers are applying these little torques, and they're little, they're not big.
Yeah.
They're not really big at all, but literally sometimes the best analogy is like hauling a wagon in the backswing and pushing a shopping cart in the downswing. That's probably the best analogy of how to swing these. And I actually had to redesign my takeaway also, not just the putter, but you know how the shaft's in the center of mass, right?
Right.
And the face is in front. I felt like when I took the putter away that I had to almost pull the putter back like I am hauling a wagon. My buddy David Fritch calls his the G-Wagon. What do you do with a wagon? You pull, right? That makes sense? So the shaft leads the face into the backswing, and then I have to reverse that coming back down. And that's why it's funny. It's like pulling a wagon in the backswing and pushing a shopping cart in the downswing. Whereas the opposite, like a ping answer has the shaft in front of the face, right? And the center of the face in front of the center of mass. Center of mass might be a little toward the heel, but I almost feel like sometimes in the backswing of that one, I have to almost push it going back or get it swinging going back, and then it can be pulled on the way down or released on the way through. So I had to modify, personally, I had to modify the putter, and I had to modify my takeaway to really make it work. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, like I said, these putters are for somebody, and I think, if I'm honest, I think the onset has a lot more bigger deal to do with it than almost anything else. The zero torque is a different sensation or a different feel. I think one of the sensations, if the balance point is high, Tony, on these things, that the head will feel extremely light to the player. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That was the one thing I noticed about like the Bettinardi antidote, which I thought looked fantastic. I texted Sam Bettinardi when it came out. I said, you know what? You want some feedback? He goes, yes, I'm at the Bulls game, but give me some feedback. I said, this is one of the better looking one of these things. Now I would sand the grooves down a little bit. It's not that I'm against grooves. It's just I've seen so much bad behavior of the ball on Bermuda greens with grooves. If you're on pure bent greens, like if you're a member of Oakmont where the greens are 15 and they're bent, I think the lower ball speed is good. That makes sense?
Yeah, to be able to control things, sure.
Yeah, and you don't want the ball coming off hot on those greens. But the vast majority of golfers that I work with are people that are from the South or people that coming down from the North, and they're complaining about why they can't putt Bermuda. And you remember Biv's wonderful presentation this past year on friction, right?
Yeah.
And I think the ball speed and the higher loft is something that needs to be fit based on where you're playing. That makes sense? So yeah. I think, I can tell you this one thing. My ping answer, the old ping answer with the smooth face and the sound slot, and, it has a higher ball speed. It's like a 1.8-ish. Smash factor impact ratio. So anytime the greens are aerated or we're not mowing our greens, I throw that in the truck. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to sit here and fight this thing. That makes sense. Then when the greens get faster, I just go to this ping answer that Ping has made me that has just a very shallow milled face. And it's just the putter's just maybe just, 10 grams heavier, 15 grams heavier. But, I can conceivably see, if you really want to take advantage, I always tell my players to travel with two putters.
Huh.
Travel with two in case you break one. Number one razor. Travel with two. I'm talking about my tour players, right?
Yeah.
Travel with two in case you break one, and then I have some players set up at like 3 degrees loft, some players set up at 4 degrees loft, just because they, and then maybe slightly different in weight, not by much. And then, if they are playing on slow Bermuda, they've got more loft and faster ball speed coming off without having to change something. But yeah, and plus if they get a little psychotic, they have that bad putting round, they can go look at something else, and at least it's
feel like it's different, right?
Yeah. Well, I got one player that has virtually the same putter. One's in black and has a dot on it, and then the other one's in satin and has a dot on it, and they're just two different lofts. And yeah, it's like if you get pissed at that one, go to that one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but these are little things, and it's like the attention to detail. So a lot of people say, "Well, that's too mechanical," or like, is it too mechanical or is it intelligence? Is that what the difference is? Like, yeah. I can definitely point the finger at myself. When I didn't know very much about putting, and I still don't know very much about putting, but I know different things. But I've been an idiot at times, changing putters throughout the day. You know what I mean? Like going to the putting green with 3 or 4 of them, and then just based on my mood, which one I was using. And now, through the years, I've become less of an idiot and starting to understand what I kind of need. And then the hard part about finding the right putter for yourself is we've been sold this bill of goods that there's the magic perfect putter for you. Well, there might be one, you know what I mean? But usually a putter cannot overcome poor mechanics. Does that make sense?
Yes.
If you have really bad movement patterns, the putter is not going to fix the movement pattern. Now, but you take somebody like a Brad Faxon or a Tiger Woods or a Rory McIlroy, where they have like a pattern that's, I call it Chips Ahoy chocolate chip cookies, right? The cookies look the same, but the chips are in a different place, right? If you have a very similar movement pattern over and over again, yeah, I can see where a putter, with a certain amount of toe hang or a certain amount of weight or whatever, you can be sensitive to that. But when people got really bad mechanics, the putter is not going to fix it. However, as you know, because you do putter fittings, Dennis Corley does putter fittings, finding the right length, finding the right lie angle to that length, getting a little bit more optimal loft, maybe the influence of a blade versus a square back or a mallet, influencing the face angle. That makes sense. So, and to be honest with you, it's a little bit of trial and error with each player. That makes sense. So,
yeah.
I think changing putters probably is the easiest thing to change. That makes sense. If your movement pattern's bad, then it's easier to just change a putter. But I don't think the putter is going to fix the movement pattern. That makes sense. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, let's kind of like summarize. Did we cover all the bases that we were kind of looking at?
I think we did.
With the zero torque. So yeah. So at the end of the day, zero torque is here to stay. It's going to help some people. I think there's going to be no significance with people with a really bad technique. And some people are not going to like them because the balance point might be too high or they can't feel the face. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And you got to give L.A.B credit. They've made some better looking ones, so you can't have the excuse, well, it doesn't look good, so I'm not going to putt with it, right? So like the Oz 1 mallet I think it looks really nice, really simple. And then, you might want to modify these things a little bit, right, to move the balance point. Could you kind of go over that just a little bit, some of the engineering behind moving the balance point?
It's if whether you believe swing weight or not, I mean, the heavier the head, the balance point moves closer to the head and you feel the head more. And the heavier the grip, it moves the other way. Or you could add counterweight in the grip, or you could add counterweight on the shaft and move the balance point, up and feel more of the whole club rather than the
club head.
The club head. Yeah.
Now, how far would you say that balance point is moving when you make these changes?
I'm trying to remember the numbers that I did when I played around with it. Sometimes it can only be like a quarter inch, half inch on some of them.
Right. But it's small, but it feels
it's not
different,
huge,
right?
But it feels different, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then, so that would be, I think, that and the overall weight modification, right? So, like, I think if you're going to go big grip, go polyurethane and lighter.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Don't go rubber. And, Golf Pride's down the street in Pinehurst from me at Pine Needles. And, I've chatted with them on several occasions, and I'm like, these big rubber grips that weigh 120 grams are not going to make it. You know what I mean? It's like there's too much weight in the handle and you can't feel the head.
Yeah.
But the smaller grips you can do in rubber, and I might, Sam Hahn actually put a leather grip on one of mine, and, people forget about leather. I mean, leather is classy and tends not to be too heavy. You know what I mean? You can really liven it up. So you got leather, you got rubber, you got polyurethane. So, but yeah. So, and then it's also in summary, like it would be kind of cool to like make it fair to the other putters, like weight wise, grip size, grip weight, moving the balance point down. What would be another way you could put? Does lead tape have a huge effect on swing weight when it comes to putters? Like
2 grams on the head is about a swing weight point, and 2 grams is MOI change of about 20.
Okay, gotcha. I've got that Auditor MOI machine that I use. Is that what you use?
That's the same one. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's more affected by the length more than anything.
Oh,
right?
gosh.
So if you chop,
the
length. Can you talk briefly about that, Tony? Because I think even though this is about torque free, this MOI thing, like with the whole club, like the Auditor machine, like if I put in a 34 inch, versus a 35 inch, I mean, that changes it by over 100 something.
Oh,
points.
It's about a 16th of an inch changes at about 10 points.
So that's 160?
160. So yeah, roughly. So that's a bunch. That's equivalent to like changing head weight by like 16 grams.
Oh, wow. So if this is huge. This is important when you talk about this, right? So I buy my L.A.B putter, my zero torque putter, right?
Yeah.
And I ordered it at 35 inches long, right? And my lie angle was 67, according to them, right? And then I go take a lesson, and I find out I actually need a 33-inch putter at 70 degrees.
Oh, man.
What
go back and get a new one. Get one. But most people, a lot of companies aren't modifying head weights in putters.
So what would happen just to if I cut 2 inches off that 35-inch L.A.B that I grabbed off I either got it from the company or I got it from Golf Galaxy, and I cut that thing down at 33 inches. What are we talking about, in swing weight or MOI?
Well, swing weight about a half inch is about, if I remember, three swing weight points. Let's just do it that way.
So
and 2 inches then becomes 12, and that's like 24 grams of head weight.
Oh my gosh! So you'd have to add 24 grams just to get it to feel.
If you were getting it the same kind of a feel of a swing weight feel.
Wow! Now would that put the balance point in the same place then, even though it's shorter?
But see, then you got to think balance point relative to length.
Yes,
it's different. So that gets a little deeper, I think.
Yeah, so those people that are going to have to modify the off the rack or the misfit one are going to have to change the length first, correct? Add some lead tape second, or reorder a new one.
Yeah.
And at $599, like that's a lot. You know what I mean? Like that's a lot of money to have to reorder one. That's the first one you bought's $599, the second one you bought is $599. My math,
Yeah, right.
that's
$1,200.
about $1,200 when I could have gotten fit for a putter. Hell, I could have had somebody hand make me one for $1,200.
Or you could go, go into some place that has them and make sure you're fit for the right, at a minimum, the right length. I mean, I know Club Champion and people like that. I don't know how they do all their fitting, but surely they can do reasonably good about length fitting, right?
Well, there's a couple ways you can fit for length, right?
Yeah.
So just as a starting point, you could measure wrist to floor, right?
Right.
But that depends on other factors too, like how far am this player going to be crouched over? If they're going to be crouched over, I'm going to probably have it shorter.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Do they got really, really long arms? Well, I'm going to probably trim it a little bit even more. You know what I mean? I like Todd Sohn's little Pythagorean theorem, which is the distance from the ball versus the height of the hands. That makes sense. The A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Like, to me, I found that to be the minimum length. So, like, I have this range in my mind after I measure somebody's arms and their wrist to floor and the posture that I'm going to put them in, and, what's the arm ratio, and I look at it and go, okay, it's going to be between 34 and 33. That makes sense?
And then tweak it.
And
right.
then I put a 34 in their hand, and I look at their setup and their arm structure and their wrist alignments, and I go, okay, let's put a 33 and a half in there and see what that looks like. Boom, right? And then I put a 33 in there and go, yeah, that's too short. And then I ask them, what do you like? Well, I like this 33 and a half. I'm like, well, there we go. You know what I mean? So as long as you're getting it within a half inch on one side or the other, you're okay. That makes sense?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people mistaken that, it's just the wrist to floor. No, the wrist to floor is just a starting point. That makes sense?
Yeah.
It's not the actual length of the club. So I think, if you knew your distance from the ball and the height of the butt of the club off the ground, the height of the hands, and then you just do a little A squared. I just literally flip my calculator on my phone to the scientific version of it. You know what I mean? And I just sit there and go, okay, 10 squared plus 32 squared equals whatever, and then take the square root of that. Boom, there's my number. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I've adopted, I guess, a few different ways of fitting for length. But those would be, two places to give you a range. That makes sense. So
yeah, but not buy a 35 and get and cut it to a 33. That's a disaster.
Yeah. Now, if you know going in that the heads are going to be heavy, then you don't have a problem. So I see this with junior golfers all the time. They come in with their Scotty Cameron and they got 35s or 40s in the toe and the heel. And I weigh their putter and I'm like, this thing weighs like 40 grams heavier than what Tiger uses, what Brad Faxon uses, what I use. And it's like, let's back these down to like 25. So cutting them down, if you already have a heavy head, you can get away with it.
Yeah.
But if you have a light head, you're, like you said, you're screwed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got just piles and layers of lead tape. And I like to put the lead tape along the sole of the putter. That makes sense?
Yeah.
I actually like to put it on the front of the sole so it creates a natural draft angle so the putter doesn't toe in. That makes sense?
Yeah.
I think that's another thing somebody needs to look at is when you get a new putter, whether it's Zero Torque or Scotty Cameron, whatever, is put the sole flat on a table and see how much the shaft's leaning backwards relative to that draft angle.
Oh, gosh.
Because, yes, so that's, if you looked at a spider, you could just put the sole as flat as you can. You'll see the shaft leaning backwards about 2-3 degrees, versus, a Scotty Cameron. So some people have to bend the shaft backwards to create that. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So it's got a built-in backward-leaning shaft. What's interesting is David Fritsch and I, we talked about this, is he likes to build the draft angle in to the way the putter's, milled, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows the loft that the putter needs to be at, at impact or address, either one. And then he just recorrects the shaft lean. So, so there's lots of neat little things about putters that the general public just doesn't realize. They just go in grab a putter, and then, you wonder, you're sitting there and you're getting a lesson, and they got the shaft laying back 2 to 3 degrees, and it's because they're just letting the putter, sit at address. You actually have to lift the tail end of those things up a little bit to let that draft angle be an advantage for you. Yeah. So you don't snag it in the backswing, so to speak. You know what I mean? That's one of the reasons, and then how it sits is another. But yeah, these so I think in summary, the zero torque putters, I think they're here to stay. Do I think they're for everybody? No. Do I think they're for somebody? Yes.
And they're going to get better, because I think they're trying to listen too.
Yeah, I think, like I said, fitting's going to be a range in the future of, from toe up to toe down. And I think I would like to see one made out of stainless steel head, like instead of aluminum.
Yeah.
Make me, I think that way you can make them smaller. Does that make sense? I would be very interested in seeing a smaller version of the Oz 1, but a solid block, like a mini Oz. That makes sense.
Yeah,
I would be kind of interested in that. Okay, let's go a stainless head and do the same. The technology you've been doing, and it's funny. A lot of them are built with the forward leaning shaft. Can you talk a little bit about how that affects the center of mass of the club, just from your background?
I haven't thought about it, to be honest. Yeah.
Well, you're moving the balance point back, more forward. Yeah, forward.
Right. So, yeah.
I got one sitting right here. So they sent me one with a straight-in shaft, one with a forward lean, and I could be corrected, but I think Sam told me that the shaft is forward leaning 2 degrees, and then the forward press grip has a 2 degree angle as well.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is the little line that's on the grip actually is supposed to line up with the front of the face. So I see a lot of people don't pay attention. That L.A.B grip that has the line on it, you're supposed to line that up with this, the center of the face or the leading edge, right? Or top edge or whatever you're looking at, but that's kind of how the putter is designed. So one of the things I think is important is when you look at the way a putter is designed, it's pretty much telling you the way you should set up to it, and even perhaps the way you should swing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right, Tony. So final thoughts on our discussion here. What were some key points that you want to take away from
I think we covered a lot of what I wanted to do and what I want to share with other people, and particularly with some of our kids. It's just not all by itself the magic wand. It might be for some of them, for anybody. And biggest thing is make sure you get the minimum pieces right. You don't have a sledgehammer, right?
Right.
You don't. I'll tell you offline about a sledgehammer story after we get off. But and you get the length, the lie, and the loft right, and you find out if you can aim it, and you find out if you can swing it.
Yeah. So I think length, lie, loft, right? Can you aim it? What's the sight pictures? The dots, the lines, the multiple lines on the front or the back, or both. And make sure it's not too heavy or too light. So yeah, I'm interested to see what happens with it in the next few years. I do think it's pretty much one of the biggest crazes since Scotty Cameron.
Absolutely.
Since the 90s. So you got to give some of these companies some credit marketing wise to create this buzz. Yeah, I can remember when Scotty Cameron came out, he's making the original designs in a better metal, better look, better sound, more like pieces of art. That's why, and look at it, even to this day, 30 years later, people are crazy about Scotty Camerons, and they do look good. I think the one-offs and the handmades look phenomenal, way better than a factory run. I would never buy a factory run Cameron. But it's amazing what putting a little Circle T on a putter does to the craze. Oh my God, I got one with a Circle T.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's not hard to hand stamp one of those in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, like I would say it's pretty interesting that it's basically taken, 20 to 30 years to create another buzz. So yeah, I mean, drinking the Kool-Aid, as I always say, right? But it is for some people. Okay. And I will, and what's funny, Tony, is I've tried to take the approach with, I know what my bias is, but
Yeah.
I wanted to go against my bias and see what I could find that would be useful. And like I said, I had to modify it to make it more of a fair fight. That makes sense? And I think the process of modifying mine really taught me a lot about it. That makes sense?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest lesson for everybody. Make sure it's just not the off the rack one. Find ways to be sure you're making a great investment.
So Tony, thank you very much on this, and always great to chat with you.
The Golf Improvement Podcast is sponsored by David Orr and the Flatstick Academy, putting instruction without all of the bull. www.flatstickacademy.com.
Thanks to David Orr and the Flatstick Academy for sponsoring my podcast and website in 2025. In the link I've provided, you'll see that David has created more than 385 Flatstick videos, more than 7,000 hours of content, and 90 premium articles. David just published a new 11-video series titled Flatstick Fundamentals, and 7 of the Flatstick Fundamental videos are free if you're a Flatstick Academy subscriber. Subscriber costs $9.99 a month. Incredible value for the money, especially if you want to stop being swayed by much of the awful putting content you see from Dr. YouTube. I've benefited from David's Flatstick Academy and yearly conferences for many years. More in future podcasts, just like this one. But again, thanks, David. See www.flatstickacademy.com for more details. David, I learned so much from this interview, and I really appreciate you doing this one with me. I am much more clear in my mind now that a good fitting is going to be truly important to any zero-torque putter performing well for a golfer. And we talked about so many other related putter fitting principles that are important for people to hear about. So again, www.flatstickacademy.com. Well, my shout out today is to someone I've known for more than 10 years, Bob Ubelor with Ubelor Golf in Indianapolis, Indiana. Bob actually did 2 hours of presentations at the AGCP Roundtable 7 in 2012. And these videos were on a range of things related to putters, toe hang, how to bend putters to create different toe hangs, and much, much, much more. I plan to rewatch these videos on the AGCP website soon. But if any of you are interested in contacting Bob and learning more about all of his efforts to create putters, and he's created and built a lot of them for golfers, you can contact Bob by phone at 317-881-4109 and by email at ubie44@sbcglobal.net. Thanks, Bob. If you click the link in the show notes for this episode, you'll see all of my favorite previously published podcast content. I hope you'll subscribe to my YouTube podcast channel and also like the episodes you listen to through YouTube. Thanks. Well, that's it for today and this great episode. I have a few ideas brewing for the next Golf Improvement Podcast episode that I will record in about 3 weeks, but nothing firm yet. Until then, take care. God bless Ukraine, and God bless America.
Game Improvement Golf, changing golfers' lives, one golfer at a time. www.gameimprovementgolf.com